The sun was a fiery red disk above the Ethabuk, casting long shadows across the dunes. The air shimmered with heat, and the only sound was the whispering of the wind as it swept over the sands, carving new ridges into the ever-changing landscape. Beneath a scrub of desert saltbush, Gyari waited, her amber eyes fixed on the horizon. The dry season was tightening its grip on the land. Water was a whisper, a promise buried beneath rock and sand. Gyari's fur bristled in the heat, but her body remained perfectly still, every muscle coiled and ready. Her ears flicked back and forth, listening for any sound that did not belong. The Panthar knew better than to trust the silence. Around her, her coalition crouched in a crescent formation, each of them a dark shadow in the golden sand. Gyari's coalition was small, only 5 of them now, after the last battle with Corlo's group. 5 lean bodies, all ribs and sinew, their black-striped coats blending into the shade. But they were fast, and they were smart. They had to be. Gyari breathed in deeply, tasting the desert on her tongue, dry, acrid, with a faint hint of blood. She could feel the tension in the air, the prickling of nerves. Her sister, Tsari, was to her left, crouched low, her tail twitching in anticipation. To her right, the young male, Chark, barely more than a cub, his eyes wide and bright with fear. She would have to teach him to hide that, Gyari thought. Fear was a weakness that their enemies would pounce on in a heartbeat, and enemies were everywhere. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a dark shape against the sun-blasted sand. She tensed, her eyes narrowing. It was a Wallarin, its slim, tawny body moving cautiously toward a distant patch of scrub. Gyari could see its flanks twitching, its ears flicking back and forth nervously. It had sensed them, but it did not know where they were. Gyari shifted her weight, careful to move slowly, silently. She felt Tsari's gaze on her, waiting for the signal. She would let the Wallarin get closer, just a little closer. And then came the sound. A howl, long and low, rolling across the dunes like distant thunder. Gyari's heart froze. The Kirradingos. They were near, closer than she'd expected, too close. The Wallarin bolted, leaping into the air with surprising speed. Gyari cursed silently, her tail flicking in frustration. The herd would be gone in seconds, spooked by the scent of their old enemies. Her eyes darted across the sand, scanning the horizon. There, to the west, a flash of gray fur moving between the dunes. Miri's pack. Gyari's lip curled in a silent snarl. The Kirradingos had been watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. She could see Miri now, the alpha female standing atop a dune, her golden eyes gleaming in the sun, watching the cats with cold calculation. "We've been caught," Tsari hissed, low enough that only Gyari could hear. "What do we do?" Gyari's mind raced. They could try to fight, but they were outnumbered. She could see at least 8 Kirradingos, and she knew there were more hidden in the scrub. If they ran, they might be chased, scattered across the sands. Either way, they were at a disadvantage. "Hold," Gyari whispered, her voice calm, steady. "Let them make the first move." Miri's howl broke off, and for a moment there was only silence. Gyari could feel the eyes of her coalition on her, waiting for her to act. She knew they trusted her, but trust was a fragile thing in the desert. One wrong move, and they would lose faith. One wrong move, and they would all be dead. Miri began to move, slowly at first, then faster, her pack following her lead, fanning out in a wide arc, cutting off their retreat. Gyari's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing through options, strategies. There had to be a way out of this. Then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the Kirradingos stopped. Miri raised her head, sniffing the air, and Gyari saw her eyes narrow. The wind shifted, bringing a new scent to Gyari's nose. Blood, fresh and sharp. She felt a surge of hope. Something had changed. Something had spooked the Kirradingos. A new figure appeared at the top of a distant dune, a lone Lycalope, its russet fur catching the light. It stood tall and confident, its thin frame almost regal against the backdrop of the desert. Gyari recognized her immediately. Tsari. The scavenger had been following them for days, always watching, always waiting. Tsari tilted her head, a sly grin spreading across her face. She had brought them something that could change the balance. Gyari's eyes darted back to Miri, who was already backing away, her pack retreating into the shadows. Whatever game Tsari was playing, Gyari knew one thing. It had just saved their lives. For now. She let out a low growl, a signal for her coalition to regroup. They would need to move quickly, find new ground before Miri or Corlo tried again. But as she watched Tsari disappear into the dunes, a new plan began to form in her mind. Perhaps it was time to make a new kind of alliance. The desert was changing, and Gyari was determined to change with it. Thank you all so much for tuning back into Eclectic Explorations. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and spread the word as much as you can. Again, I would greatly appreciate any form of donations to keep all of this going.